Hopefully this will work for me.
It's so much better if you just hold it in your hand and put it right up to your face.
Good evening. We're back, Lieutenant Gruber and I, for our quarterly presentation. In keeping with the previous pattern, last time was community policing stuff, this time's crime data. It's a mixed bag, and I'll go over that. You should have all received your semi-annual reports, hopefully. We got those a couple weeks ago. This is kind of a snapshot of a lot of that. That'll go into more detail for you. Today we're going to go over the Uniform Crime Report came out for the year for 2015. As I said, it's kind of a mixed bag. We're going to go over our top 3 concerns, crime-wise, both by data and by citizen complaints, our ongoing prostitution initiative. I'm going to talk about overdose cases within the city and the influx of heroin, and it all ties into the sober home issue that I'm hearing quite a bit about. And I'm going to talk about our calls for service and what we're doing proactively to tackle these issues. This was our UCR data from FDOE. When I got here, if you remember, my first report was on crime data for January to June of 2015, and crime was up for the year 5.5% overall. We finished the year out up 2.7 for the year of 15. So it came down in half. I'm not going to claim that because I got to claim the one that's going up. But we did change the philosophy some with more of a focus on the law enforcement end, and that came right from Sheriff Bradshaw himself. And it seems to be working, though we are not there yet. You're in the no spin zone. I don't spin. I tell you like it is, and I hope you appreciate that. We are working on it. One of the stats that jumps out is the robberies. They were up last year quite a bit. If you recall, the robbery ban expired, I believe, a couple years ago, and it was really effective. And we're working on. We can't get that same grant back, but we're working on other grants that we might be able to get to reduce the robberies. As you know, a lot of our robberies are lifestyle issues. Not all of them. We've had some serious ones recently that had nothing to do with the victim, but a lot of them involve drugs, prostitution, people that are inebriated, things like that. And that's hard to combat when they're already doing something criminal and then they get robbed on top of it. It's hard to drive those stats down. Some of the other things that throw the numbers up high is if there's a real small increase, the percentages. I hate percentages. I like actual numbers because with small amounts, the percentages can be skewed a bit. But overall, 2.7. The good news is this year, robberies are down significantly so far, as are residential burglaries, which I'm very happy with. This is an article I pulled out of the Associated Press last year. It kind of was similar. Crime was up 1.7 overall, and certain demographics it was up 5.3 for the year. So we're seeing a trend. What I'm seeing citywide is also happening countywide and even nationwide in a lot of cases. So it's not that we're an outlier or whatnot. We're sort of, with few variations, we're in line. Where are we at? The top 3 issues per our crime data, which I'll show you where we get that from, are robberies, auto burglaries, and drugs and prostitution. I spoke on the robberies. The auto burglaries are up a bit this year. They were up a bit last year. Residential burglaries were down about 18% last year, which is a good thing. I'd say about 80% of our auto burglaries are unlocked or open cars. That's an issue we're trying to educate and tackle. The unlocked cars with valuables inside. We've got guns, car keys, wallets, iPads, iPhones, you name it, in unlocked cars. So that's a tough one. We're trying to educate that public on that one. Drugs and prostitution I'll talk about a little bit. A lot of the violent crime we have is related directly to the drugs and prostitution. We've got, as we clean up an area, the bad guys fight over moving into that area. And we got to fight to keep the new bad guys out. And that's a lot of what the violent crime that you're seeing lately. It's over fighting for territory that we cleaned up. So we do the right thing and we clean it up. And just like we're having a lot of retirements or promotions, as we create openings, the bad guys are fighting for promotions. They don't retire, but they do go to prison and other things, and they fight for the territory. So that's a lot of our violent crime right now. It's very random and frustrating. The perceived, which is coming from citizen complaints, the top 3 would be sober homes, and I'll go into that a little more in detail. drugs and prostitution, which is out there invisible, and then homeless issues. And I'm quick to point out when I speak at the neighborhood meetings that 2 out of those 3 in and of themselves are not illegal, the sober homes and the homeless issues. They do bring some ancillary crime and whatnot with them in some cases, but 2 of them are not illegal. And the sober homes are particularly frustrating right now. Excellent. This is just a snapshot comparison of one of our sister districts in our south region. We're the top one, District 14, Lake Worth. District 6 is West Point and Lantana, and Lake Worth from Lantana Road to Flavor Picked. They're 60 square miles, we're 7. We have the same number of deputies to the number. There's the activity. I want to show a few things. We've the first in the top column, in the last 6 months of 2015, our arrests went up 19%. Our FIRs, which are field interviews, where the deputies stop people on foot or bicycles and interview them and do a quick report. They're basically encounters. They're up 42%. And then our 1050s are traffic stops. They were up 14%. So the guys are working, the guys and gals. Comparing them to our closest sister district, you can see the numbers for yourself. They're broken into 2 6-month increments. The guys and gals are definitely working in District 14. The frustrating part is at 60 square miles, their crime rate is lower than ours, even though we're doing 2, 3, and 4 times the activities. So that goes to what I say about arresting the rate of the problem. We're going to keep arresting them, but there's other factors that have to play in for it to be a permanent solution. Here's some of the data broken out into the charts. Prostitution arrests were up 78% over 2014. We made 171 prostitution arrests as opposed to 96. Liquor violations, that's your open containers and such, they were up 25%. And those violations oftentimes lead to bigger crimes. We'll arrest them for that open beer, and they have guns, drugs, warrants, things like that. They're good pretextual arrests. And then the drug arrests are up 25.9%. 613 from 487. So the guys and gals are definitely out there stopping the right people and making the cases. Some of the crime data. Robberies, as I said, were up last year, 197 over 157. Arrests were up as well. A lot of times the robberies are very difficult to solve. They happen very quickly, and the perpetrators, I arrested people from Miami to Fort Pierce. They came here specifically to target some of our residents. And they rob them, and by the time we're even called, oftentimes they're back on I-95 headed north or south. So and a lot of times they can't make a good identification. They're very difficult to solve, but we're solving the ones we can. As I said, the burglaries last year were down 17.9%, which is a good thing. The thefts were up a little bit. That's where you're talking about your shoplifting, your bike thefts, things like that. They were up a little bit last year. Prostitution, we did 2 large operations targeting prostitutes, but we've got guys out there every day trying to pick them up. We're making arrests. You see the numbers. We got 19 in one day a couple weeks ago. Arrested. The reverse operations, that's targeting the customers. We did 2 major ones and some smaller ones last year. As I said, there was 171 in 2015, and we've already made 51 this year. So we're out there. The frustrating thing is even on the 3rd one, which is a felony, oftentimes they're out in a matter of days. We're working really closely with the state attorney. They realize the gravity of the problem. We've met with them in person. We've showed them the mug books of the girls, and it's gotten a lot better in the last couple months. We're also mapping them. Mapping helps. Once one of our undercovers arrested him, his face is burnt, his car is burnt that he used. Another deputy can't use that undercover car. Mapping them, they have to agree to a kind of a probation. They agree it's a plea and pass where they get out of jail, but they agree to stay out of areas that they're known to frequent, like Federal, Dixie, Military Trail. And if a deputy in a uniform even sees them walking out there on one of those areas they're not allowed to be without a legitimate reason, he just takes a picture, does one of those FIRs, sends it to the state, and they violate them, and they agree to do 30, 60, 90 days as part of their probation. That's a great deterrent. because that allows a uniform deputy to make a prostitution arrest, whereas normally that's not possible, or it's very difficult. So that's working very well. We've got 11 currently mapped, and we finally got it all put together maybe 2 months ago. So there's 11 mapped. We've already violated a bunch as well. So that's a good thing. I'm working. When we're clear, I have a couple more slides. Okay, Commissioner. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is your overdoses. This is new since I've been here. The heroin is all over the county, and we're no different. Heroin's made a huge comeback. It's the most prevalent it's been in my 20+ year career. Consequently, it's part of the reason we're having overdoses all over the county. And again, we're no different, and we're up there. As far as sheriff's office districts, we're one of the higher ones. A lot of the cities, Delray Beach seems to be the most prevalent place for the overdoses right now. West Palm Beach, a lot of the cities are dealing with it more than the suburban areas. But the blue dots these are from January to April. The blue dots are overdoses that were revived, and the red dots were fatal. It wouldn't fit. The left side is the north end of the city, the right side is the south end. That's a lot. I believe it was 30+, and that was as of the end of April. And there's been more, and that's just the ones we're aware of. A lot of the ones they just call the fire rescue, and if they're not violent, they revive them, and we're not even aware of some of those. These are the ones where we responded. That's a lot of overdoses in 4 months. There is, I know I was asked in my first presentation 11 months ago about sober homes, and I told you I really couldn't quantify. It's still difficult to quantify, but there's definitely a relationship to sober homes and a lot of the drug problems, the overdose problems. Some of these are at sober homes, and a lot of these are people from out of state that we don't know where they're from, but we find them in the parking lot. We found people in garbage can, we found people in alleyways, and they're from the Northeast, and they have no record down here. They've been here a very short time. It just points that direction. It's still hard to quantify with the ADA issues, but we are making some headway. We're looking at it from the fraud angle. There's a lot of fraud involved in the unscrupulous homes, and we're looking at the overdose angle. If you saw the paper a couple of days ago, we made a homicide arrest on a heroin dealer out of Lake Worth a week or so ago. They're tracing back where these overdoses are coming from. The problem is the heroin is so potent nowadays, and then it's being laced with the fentanyl, which is even more potent. And the same baggie you've done 50 times, the 51st time, it's 10 times as powerful, and you overdose. But we talked to these people, some of which have been brought back 2 and 3 times, and they're saying the high is that good that they risk it. Sad. But some of them 2 and 3 times they're getting the Narcan that the fire rescue guys have. So we're working on it. Everyone's involved all the way up to the federal level. We're working on the sober home issues. Hopefully we can come to something fair and reasonable to right some of these issues. Business calls for service in the last 6 months, or actually since January to April. This is the mapping we use to research. As I zoom in, those little lollipops will pop up, and I can click on them. It tells me what the crime was, where it was. I got the reports attached. When you back all the way out, this is what it shows. I get asked often, how come I didn't see a deputy patrolling my street? How come I haven't seen a deputy all day yesterday? And this is partly why. We want them patrolling in addition to doing their proactive activities. But if you look at some of those numbers, that's broken all the way out to the little sectors and subsectors. I mean, some of them, the top right corner has 13. We had 13, and that's case numbers. We probably respond to 3 or 4 calls for every case number we pull. So you can multiply a lot of those numbers by 3 to 4. We went to that area 13 times. If you go down to the center of town, there's 946. So we put them out all over the city, and we've got them patrolling. But as soon as calls go out, a lot of them require 2 or more deputies. The deputy that's patrolling that sector is going to have to keep going to the one where we've been 946, 683, 633. You see a trend where in the middle there's a lot of calls, and on the outskirts it's kind of light, and that's where the complaints come about the lack of presence. We're aware, and we're trying to get them out there any way we can. Reserves, ancillary units, support units. But these guys are running call to call to call, making arrests, and that's why you're not always going to see them. I have the same issues where I live personally. What are we doing? We're doing a lot of proactive work, as I said. We're working with the community, regularly meeting with the citizens, and I speak to all of you quite often. We attend all the association meetings to listen to the concerns, try to address them as best we can. We have a lot of good stuff going on. I know it sounds cliche, and I wish I could elaborate right now, and I can't. But on the next one, I'm hoping, or the one after that, we've got some really, really good stuff going on. The sheriff hasn't said no to anything. Anything I've asked him for, or anybody between our ranks, they've said yes. And I'm asking. So we've got some good stuff in the works. I'm hoping the next one's going to be, I'll be able to elaborate. Like I said, we're working really close with the state attorney's office. Commissioner Amoroso and I met with Mr. Amber personally, and he was very responsive. It's been noticeably different in the last couple of months. They're working literally right with us side by side, and it's helping. We're focusing on the repeat offenders and the serious crimes. And then we started a new thing with code enforcement a couple weeks ago, where every week a couple of our guys and one of their guys rides around, and we hit problems from both angles. Maybe it's an abandoned house where there's drugs going on. They hit the abandoned house issues and the code issues. We hit the crime issues, and so far we've had some really good successes there too. I'm looking forward to continuing that program. And with the prostitution, like I said, they were letting them out in a day, time served, 2 days. Now we send a deputy to every time we arrest prostitutes. The very next morning of first appearance, we send our designated prostitution deputy, and the state attorney has been sending a dedicated state attorney, not just the one that works every day of first appearance. So that's making a difference. They're not just a number; they're being focused on it when it's a problem. So that's having a great effect. With that. Ready for any questions?
Commissioner, questions? Commissioner Meyer?
Good evening, and thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
My comments go to your statements about the sober homes, and particularly about recording overdoses. There have been a series of articles in the Palm Beach Post this week, one specifically referring to things that cities in Palm Beach County could potentially be doing to address the sober home issue but are not utilizing. It really referred to two specific things that we could be doing. One of those was recording the number of overdoses that are happening in suspected halfway houses. As one Delray Beach code officer was quoted in the paper as saying that if residents of sober homes are currently using drugs, then they don't actually fall under the protection of ADA. So there was a report in that article about a sober home that was actually shut down because the city had taken measures to start recording those overdoses. Now it does suggest in the article that that's still very difficult to start recording because we don't necessarily have that information to begin with. But it does make me think back to a few weeks ago. We had a facility on Federal Highway where residents of that facility were outside holding picket signs, essentially boycotting what they claimed to be was a sober home, and due to the fact that there had been overdoses there. So I'm wondering what your opinion is on the effectiveness of that, and is that something we could apply in that instance, particularly this case on Federal Highway?
Sure, I read the same articles, and I had a lot of questions. I'd have to verify all that information. I plan on meeting with the city attorney and our legal to make sure that that's all accurate, that we can do everything it says. I know the city of Boca's tried things and it ended up in lawsuits, and that's what we don't want. We don't want to be the bad case law on this. Lieutenant Gruber and I met with a sober home operator a few months ago, and they were legitimate, and their estimation was that 75% of them were probably not legitimate. And that, with what knowledge I have of it, I would probably agree with that. A lot of those sounded like great resources that we can use to go after those scrupulous ones, because we need the good ones, because people do have addiction issues. But we definitely want to do what we can with the ones that are in it for the money. It can lead to other things that we're seeing, the body dumps. I mean, we found a girl from Maryland in her 20s with no arrest record dumped in the alleyway at 1100 South between Dixie and J. It was obviously dumped. And that's my fear if we start doing that, they can say, I can't have an overdose at my, and that's not saying that that's what happened. It could have been, she could have been in a car with someone who panicked and pushed her out, but she's obviously dumped there. We found someone in a garbage can. We found people in a car in front of Dunkin' Donuts. We don't want to do that either. So I want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row. The Sheriff's Office grant division is trying to find a grant for the sober home issue, and we're glad that would help a lot. I know the FBI's are getting going on this issue. And again, this is a lot of our issues, it's not only a Lake Worth issue. It's, when you drive up down 95, you see all the sober since 2014, sober since 2012. I mean, it's a South Florida issue, it's a California issue, it's an Arizona issue. But there's no doubt, I guess Palm Beach County is leading, like we did with the pill mills, we're leading with, with the number of sober homes in Florida. So we seem to come to the forefront of a lot of these things. But I liked a lot of it, and I plan on meeting with Mr. Placidia and our legal to make sure that's all accurate and make sure we're acting within the law.
And just one more thing, and the other side of that, I was going to make these comments in my commissioner comments, so I'll spare everyone else when we get to that point. But the other half of that article actually is, it's the other thing that we could be doing is suggesting that there is a federal law that gives cities the right to request an application from sober home operators to require that, to show that they are providing what the law describes as reasonable housing, which here in Lake Worth would be 2 parties per bedroom, at least as I understand. The article suggested that Delray Beach has actually been taking these applications and has processed hundreds of them since 2010, and the city of West Palm Beach close to 100 since 2014, but suggests the city of Lake Worth has only processed 1 ever. And I was curious if you are familiar with that law, and also how we can make that part of our discussion here in Lake Worth. How can we pool code enforcement officers? Because I understand that's a crucial part of this application process. How can we start that discussion here in the city?
I wasn't familiar until the article, and again, I want to verify, but that would be almost like the city and the code enforcement function. I fully support. Another woman we had in my office a month or so ago had 3 within 50 feet of her house. You can't have 3 Publixes, you can't have 3 Dunkin' Donuts. You shouldn't have 3 of anything in a residential neighborhood. There's got to be some kind of regulation, and those occupancy things are fire issues. In my house, I can't have more than 5 people, and I'm sure a lot of that's with fires and things like that. I don't know why someone can have 15. I'm all in favor for everybody's safety. I would support it, and we'd help you all for enforcement.
Thank you. I'd like to suggest that perhaps we have a workshop here in the city on that issue.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyd.
Thank you, Captain Baer. Thank you for presenting it, and I'll follow up a little bit on some of the sober home ones. As you know, we've met several times on that one with some concerned residents, and city attorney knows that I've met with him as well on, and I'd been pushing. I said, you know, I'm game for the lawsuits, bring them on. We need to be doing something, and I was very interested to see that article that Lois Frankel had brought down people from, I guess it's HUD, Housing and Urban Development, as well as Department of Justice, to try and say, and certainly the takeaway that I went with that was that there's a good deal more legal room to work with than we thought. And that we may not, there'll be some, apparently the plan is to issue some joint statements that would give some legal background that would help us out, but it sounds like we could start keeping track of things more, and certainly it is a little disturbing to hear that Delray and West Palm Beach have already, you know, in the hundreds that they're starting to do something to keep track of, and we're at 1. I think we need to up our game a little bit on that one. And I appreciate you, Captain Baer, pointing out the, you know, and obviously it's your professional opinion. It's not necessarily a research statement, but your impression that the connection between the heroin overdoses and the sober homes looks pretty, it's certainly not all of it, I'm sure, but it's not unrelated either.
No, the crime in general is if there's an effect on crime in general, and I can see it.
Yeah, that's certainly what we're hearing from the word out there.
20-something males walking the streets, and a lot of them, they're coming from all over the country, and we don't know their histories and whatnot, but it's definitely having a negative effect on crime in a lot of ways. I can't say that much.
Yeah. You mentioned in your map that there's quite a difference in the calls for service in different areas, and probably somewhat of an inverse correlation with the complaints you get about, I never see the cop cars, blah, blah, blah. And I think you helped us understand that, well, 13 calls for service versus 1,000, yeah, you're going to have more cop cars where the 1,000 are. Are we fully actively using the COP program, and is that a sensible way to help out with some of the areas that it would like at least some visibility? Or let's say a little bit more visibility, because you're there, just maybe not as much as people like.
We are. We actively try to recruit. We have the COP command from our Lakewood unit, and myself and other deputies speaking at the meetings, trying to, our goal is to get 2 from every neighborhood association. That would double our membership. We have about 24 active COPs. If we got a couple from every neighborhood, I'd love to have 50. The more eyes, the better. It would certainly help. We're making really good use of our reserve deputies. I've got them in here every weekend. It's helping a lot with the robberies. My personal opinion is that's why robberies are down a lot this year, because we've been doing that since January. And those are deputies that are working for free. They're either retired deputies who are keeping their certification up, or they're young guys and girls trying to get full-time jobs. So they're out here for free, and you can't tell the difference. They're fully trained, and they're wearing the same clothes and driving the same car. And,
cool.
They're doing a great job in our robbery prone areas. It's showing up statistically.
2 last ones. I'm really pleased to hear of, and some of these you had mentioned a little in some of our meetings, but great idea on the joint ride-alongs with code enforcement and PBSO. That seems very promising. Really glad to hear the close work with the state attorney's office, and seems pretty smart on the first appearance on the prosecution to try to push, once we've done our part here, push it at the prosecution. The only other request I have is, and this is probably not just like Worth, but just a general one, science geek, I can't help it. I'd like to see some of the statistics numbers on longer term trends, so maybe do a last 10 years kind of thing where you can see, what's the general pattern. I'm sure that's not your department necessarily, but if you can push the word back up.
Actually, there is one from when you guys took.
We do.
There is one when they took.
Some of them we do.
Yeah.
I'm going to rotate back. I know Camp Silva always compared our crime for the year to the last year before the merge, which was 07. And we're getting pretty far. It's been 8 years now. I'll still do that because the overall angle is still going the right direction. The bar's going down with crime. We've had little spikes like this, 2.7.